Hi, welcome to JadeCon Gaming. I'm Adam. Today we're going to be I'm going to flip through and review another of the Advanced Encounters books from Sneak Attack Press. This one is Terrain Toolbox, and again, this is one from the Kickstarter. In funding the one, both of them got made, or rather, I think the art got made for them through the Kickstarter. And now they're available through RPG Now. And again, I got the Pathfinder version of this. So, let's take a look. Again, 3 chapters, and this one has an appendice. Although the difference is on this one, with 10 pages setting up, and then 20 pages of sample terrain. The samples in this one is a lot of what you're going to use. The first ones help you figure out how to use. The first chapters help you figure out how to use these, and you can certainly make some of your own. But there's so much in here. Because they go over how to build terrain. So if you wanted to build your own, you certainly could. How to alter the difficulty, why to use it, why use terrain. The whole idea with this is that it gives you interactive environments for the combats to take place around. Things for the players to utilize in combat other than just having more than just difficult terrain is, I guess, what you're used to. If you're setting some things up, you're like, well, these are difficult to get through. If you're moving through a pile of rubble, difficult terrain. This is terrain that can do other stuff, or that the players can use to do stuff. Things that terrain can be. Obstruction is that difficult terrain or completely obstructing the path. Alter movement, damage, negative effects, positive effects, healing. It can grant special abilities. That's the next chapter, is what special abilities are. That is, the players can use it to do something. If the piece of terrain is a ballista, they can use it to fire bolts. Or a combination of those. And then whether or not the terrain changes over time, how it changes, and does it move. Special abilities, if the terrain allows them to move, to make attacks, to do other things, and how that works. And it also provides levels and to make it where you can make your terrain close to the same level as your players. You can balance it so that you don't end up putting on a piece of like a weapon on the battlefield that's terrain that can then just outweigh any of what the players can do. Make it balanced. And then we're quickly into sample terrain. The sample terrain, they have guides for how to read the entries, which are largely divided into 3 sections. The entries will first have their basic, what's the effect of the terrain, how do the players know about the terrain does, how do you set it up. Then they give special abilities. Anything that has, that gives lets that player do a special ability, they give that. And then they have their advice section. And that's why I say that on this one, the sample terrain is so much more, the samples are so much more than the beginning. Because they have so much in here that you can, the advice section is first how to build an encounter with it, which is, how to place it into the battlefield so it will be useful. Great. And then they have variations and reskinning. And those will allow you to take these terrains and put them into any other, setting on their own. Variations are minor changes. If it was, if it was something that shot out lightning, well, it's like, well, it could instead shoot out acid. That's a variation. It's like just pointing out they'd probably say you can change the energy type for this. And reskinning is what makes it where it can fit in any setting. In here, they'll say, like they have one where it's like some rocks or pillars have lightning go between them randomly. Well, they're like, well, I mean, that's great for some sort of just arbitrary setting, but you can make it the ruins of an old temple that has lightning between it. Or you can make it, in a sci-fi, and I don't know if they mention ever here, I think they stick to fantasy, but it gives you that idea. In a sci-fi, it could be like an arc reactor kind of thing, where you have coils that have electricity go between them, and so in a different setting, you can change it pretty simply. And I'm not going to go over all the ones in there, because they have a huge number. And they have some, like, here they have, Arcane Ballista, and like Blood Mage's Circle. That's the one I think, yeah, it allows you to use metamagic abilities for your spells, for certain, I think it's arcane spells, by sacrificing health. And in order to apply a metamagic on the spot to your spells. If you're in this section of the battlefield, it allows you to do that. And they have a lot of those where they're magical things, and those are cool, but they're not the ones where, I read through and I just go, wow, that's so useful for so many. Those are like great to, you have that and you can build, an encounter on that, and you can really use it. But then you get things like, exploding keg. Have a barrel of explosives. They have a fire swamp. Princess Bride. Floating stones. A giant cog. Like to make you put your characters in the middle of a giant clockwork machine. Flammable oil. Vine lifts to make it where you can access different elevations of terrain. The lightning pillars I'd mentioned. Load-bearing pillar, which allows the players to, knock down the pillar to make parts of the ceiling collapse. And logs floating down a river that you can jump between. Shattering glass, which, they give reskins, could also be shattering ice, or some other system. It doesn't have to be clear glass, because they give rules for that, but it could also be like opaque glass, where you can't see through it, so you don't know what's on the other side even. Mine carts. Puppies will make them sleep. A rug that you could pull out from under someone. A trick staircase, unholy altars, wild magic zone. I mean, they have, and there's so many more in there. And then at the end here, they have terrain, and appendices where they have terrain by location, where they give you, caverns, wilderness, urban, ruins, magical, any planes, outer planes, the fairy realm and shadow realm, and just the ability to. What of the sample terrain would work well in those environments. And there's so many more in here. I mean, I don't want to spoil them all. Sneak attack press. But they give details in how to utilize them in the campaign. How to build encounters around them. How to help your players use them, figure out that they can use them. They just give a lot of ideas. And I mean, I did this, I said back, this was with the other one. I was running that D20 modern game I was telling you about. And I'd had an interesting, someone along this lines as well. That I'd used shortly prior to finding this project on Kickstarter, and just being like, I gotta see what they can suggest. I'd done one in like a factory where I started out with, where it had like various machines and mechanical arms and conveyor belts and and various things that had controls, and I started with the enemies in the control room, and then essentially the players had to fight their way to the control room partway through, and then there were enough waves of enemies afterwards that then they could use the controls, and then they got to turn all the terrain that they'd had to struggle their way through. They got to turn that and use it against the enemies that were now coming through. So that was, I mean, as a game master at least, I enjoyed it. I had fun watching them figure out, and making checks, figure out how to work the welder arm to, catch someone on fire, or reverse the conveyor belt to make it where, the enemies can't get to them, or, I got to show, utilize the terrain, show it off to them what the terrain can do, and then give them the controls, and they figured it out. But, I mean, a lot of those things just through reskinning would be things that you can, even just the samples, even beyond just, they give you rules to, here are guidelines to build new stuff, but a lot of the samples can be reskinned. So I'll link to where you can get it. Again, reasonable, available as a PDF in addition to this hard copy if you're just going to be using it to set up. It really depends on whether you, I like physical. But the PDFs, really if you just needed something at the table to print for yourself, it's 30 pages. So check it out, put the link. Have a great day.